Hello from COP27 in Egypt, a country that knows only too well what it's like to be on the front line of climate change. So what's happened since last year in Glasgow? Well, I'm joined by President Werner Hoyer of the EIB. What's your impression since we last talked at a COP in Glasgow? We've had the Ukraine war, we've had such a challenge. To what extent do you think that has blown people off course?
Before I come to that question, let me say that COP26 was a surprisingly successful COP. The political environment was not too constructive. The big disappointments around G20 and all this. But then all these thematic talks in Glasgow, also agreements that were made, that was quite promising, but it consists mainly of announcements and commitments. Now it's time for delivery, and that makes this COP27 here much more difficult, because people will say, okay, what have you accomplished since COP26 and what are the next steps? Not in announcements, but in walking the talk.
So people are waiting for action. At the same time, we've seen the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a massive energy crisis. Is it slowing people down, or is it concentrating minds?
Well, it has a huge impact, just as well as COVID had a huge impact before. But there is a tendency for some people who had never been too familiar or too enthusiastic about the climate action to hide behind the virus or the war in Ukraine. And that, of course, is difficult and dangerous, because backtracking would lead us absolutely onto the wrong path. I see that the awareness of climate action is growing. The Ukraine war has shown us that this dependency on Russian fossil fuels and other autocrats' fossil fuels, for that matter, is very, very detrimental. We must never move ourselves in such a situation again. And at the same time, we get the reports from the international scientist community and from the United Nations that if you don't move forward quickly on climate action, then it's going to be too late. Nobody believes in 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature increase anymore. Everybody's talking about something between 1.6 and 2.5, and that then can be disastrous. So we might reach tipping point. So the awareness that we must act quickly is here much stronger than it was in Glasgow, and therefore I think we should not get distracted from our clear path of energy transition, just transition, and that means also a completely new and proactive approach towards development policies. Development seen always in connection with technology, i.e. innovation, and climate.
I mean, we're here in Egypt, it's the Africa COP. Europe has to be a bit careful, doesn't it, not to lecture the Africans about what to do. How do we actually ensure, though, that these countries get on the path to an accelerated transition?
Well, I have the feeling that many of our African friends and colleagues and partners are fed up with our rhetoric, which is not substantiated by action. And this is why we need to bring this word of partnership with Africa to life. That means that lecturing is about the worst thing you can do, but making cooperation with Europe attractive, that's something different. And I think we must make sure that we do not prescribe our African partners what kind of energy sources to tap, but we must convince them that it is the best solution, the most sustainable, and at the end of the day, the cheapest solution to go for renewables and energy efficiency. And
what does that mean in practice for the EIB, making that path attractive?
Well, I think we must be enabled, our shareholders and others, the European Commission, for instance, as guarantor, to be more active in the southern part of this world, in particular in Africa. Many economic and energy needs in Europe will be satisfied only if we intensify our cooperation with Africa. Take green hydrogen, for instance. We in Europe, we have the technology to go for a massive expansion of the production of hydrogen in Africa, because with our floating wind farms and other solar-based, wind-based, geothermal-based energy productions, we will be able to produce this enormous amount of electricity that is needed for electrolysis. But then comes the next step. Is this green hydrogen that we might be able to produce only there for export to Europe in order to get the industrial production in Europe going? Or is it something that where the Africans have the right expectation to benefit from as well? And therefore I think we need to have a little bit more really partnership-based approach towards development policies in Africa.
Partnership is the key. On that note, thank you very much, President Hoyer, and back to you.
Thank you.